Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Sup, Holmes?
Beware, your host, Jonathan Holmes.
Holy Christ, you sounded terrifying on this Mother's Day, Sinistar. And I was just here with a gentleman named Richard Hofmeier, but... Oh, is that him? He just appeared. I think they won't see you unless you talk.
Hello.
Oh, it's you. Oh, you're there. How are you, Richard Hofmeier?
Somehow,
You've become, for whatever reason in my mind, there are people that are both their names, like Kanye West, for instance, Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Richard Hofmeier. I don't want to just call you Richard. You're like a double name guy, and you're a well-known guy these days. Since the IGF happened earlier this year, you won all these at least 2 awards, right? You won the grand prize and the one other one. What was the other one you won?
Well, there were 2. Thanks very much. Now, narrative and Nuovo, or so I'm told. All of this is subject to reevaluation at any time, or so I'm told. So, but for right now, there's 3 of them.
You could unwin an award?
Well, sure. I mean, I would expect so. If something about me were to come out that maybe in this interview, for example, that were really provocative or reprehensible in some way, I would expect those things to be subject to revision.
Like Lance Armstrong? Like if it turns out you were juicing the whole time, they'd be like, no, your game actually wasn't that good. That'd be quite a hoot. When did you get started in making video games?
Oh man, well, I don't know if I even have yet. It's I just kind of made one with this kind of beginner's tool set called AGS, which is great. Adventure Game Studio, it's free. And I just I was at a job and I should have been working, and I was thinking, this sucks. I was making all the yellow page ads for a phone book, which is kind of like the ham sandwiches of art, right? And I was up all night at this job. They let me work nights, and I was thinking, if I was doing anything else, what would I do? And so I thought, can you make games as an individual? Do you need to be an expert? Do you have to be do you have to hold a degree in computer science to program a game? And it turns out, of course, you don't. You can just jump right in, And so I did so. I saw, I guess, Cactus and Yahtzee Croshaw came up at the time right away, and then Google as just people who do it alone. And Yahtzee used AGS to make his games, and so I just grabbed it and got to work. So that's pretty much
how long ago was that?
A couple of years ago, maybe I guess 2008, 2009. And so the idea was that I was going to make a game every 30 days. And then I realized the kind of stature and quality of these other games that I just simply had no idea about. These games made kind of outside of the mainstream, off the branching path. And there's so many good ones, as of course you know. But I came to it pretty late. And so it kind of elevated my standard, and I had to kind of step up my game a little bit in order to make a contribution, So it took longer than I thought, yeah.
Sure. So your standard for the quality of your own work rose as you saw the quality of the work of others.
Yeah.
Shows how serious you started to get into it. When did you first start in kind of design in general? You said you were designing ads for phone books before game development. Did you go to school for art prior to that?
No, I wasn't a very good student, and I don't really have much education to speak of. So most of this stuff has just been illustration or websites or wine labels, textbook illustrations, corporate logos, websites, concert posters, stuff like that, graffiti, a lot of that stuff. Mostly to meet girls, I guess.
There's a great. I suddenly got echoey on my end. Do I sound echoey to you?
Should I switch to headphones here? Let me turn off the speakers.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Oh, it's Godzilla.
So if you want to articulate a really verbose question, I guess I'm going to run around the corner here, so I'll be right back.
Sure. The echoing actually went away by now, but why not have headphones? They look cool, I think. those listening at home instead of watching, you could see that I'll describe to you the fact that I'm wearing giant, silly headphones today because it's in stereo sound. And just in case Richard came at me from the left instead of the right, I wanted to be sure to hear him. So far, so good. I wonder if he made that Godzilla. The tail got made into sushi. Again, for those listening at home, there's an artwork of Godzilla with sushi tail by Richard Hofmeier. Yeah, did you make that?
No, that's a print from Silkscreen print shop just down the street, which is kind of full of these scratch and dent prints, and you can just grab them, and you don't have to pay for them still, but they're cheaper that way.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, so I can't even tell you who did it, so let's just say it is mine.
Sure.
I don't know the name of the artist, so sure, yeah. And send me an email if you'd like one for your own. I'll even sign it for you.
That would be great. Thank you. And where do you live?
Seattle right now. Kind of finally home. I had a little road trip this last week to Los Angeles, California. Sorry about this.
Oh, that's okay. It's kind of like a drum solo. Oh, yeah, it's very nice. Oh, it's good.
One more level. All right. So, yeah, I was in L.A. Thanks for asking. And for the UCLA Games Art Festival, looks like this.
Oh, yeah, I saw that ad on your, not an ad, a promotion on your website.
Yeah, super good. It was quite a bit of fun. Kind of games invited into the sacred halls of the Hammer Museum in LA, and so we were, projecting, Messhoff's game Pukuzi on the same walls that hold up Toulouse-Lautrec's and Rembrandt's. So the idea of games kind of in a really rowdy way being evaluated in the same spirit as fine art is really exciting. Lots of fun.
Yeah, people are talking about it a lot these days, and it's an interesting dynamic. The relationship, the conversation it's forming between people, to me, is very interesting to observe because there's some people that feel very strongly about advocating for video games as an art form, and a lot of pride and a lot of sense of self-importance about it sometimes, which turns off the people who really want to hold on to video games as something that's theirs, as they kind of embrace the idea of it being lowbrow entertainment. They're wearing Budweiser hats and screaming, "Games aren't art, you moron! Don't make them for you, make them for me." And then the people who like games as art get called pretentious, and then they say, I'm not pretentious, you're stupid. And then they say, I'm not stupid, only pretentious people will call me stupid. But anyway, how do you feel like you fit into that whole conversation, and what do you make of it?
Well, that sums it up for me. I mean, it sounds like maybe you've stepped in the same things that I have a little bit, or maybe a little bit more thoroughly in your kind of capacities, because we're relying on you, like game developers and players and kind of everyone. We're all counting on you to contextualize this stuff. I mean, whenever I have a conversation like this one, I want to emphasize the fact that it's like really important, because it's hard for people like me to determine how relevant these things are culturally or in society, because I think they're amazing. I think they're cool. These games, I think they have this great untapped potential to accommodate, like they differ from, like, a painting will show the same to an empty gallery as it will to a packed one, right? And a movie can play to an empty theater the same as it will play to a full one. Maybe like live theater, stage plays are a little bit different, and live music is a little bit different that way, because there's kind of this intangible vibe happening, and that can change the output or the content, right? But games, they're not themselves until you stick your hand into them, right? Like they don't exist as themselves unless they have a dance partner or a bunch of dance partners, right? And that's interesting to me, and I think that's profound. I think it's new that artists are de-emphasizing their role in order to facilitate an interaction, or at least presumably to facilitate one. There's kind of like some false control that can be granted through games, which is kind of fun, I think, too, because a game designer, like some folks like I guess like Bennett Foddy, Paul Riders and Quap and pretty much everything Bennett does. Kind of plays with this notion of torture. He gave a talk at IndieCade last year about torturing players and for fun. It was really enlightening conversation. But like, I think that like this kind of give and take is interesting, and it seems to represent something special about I think our time in history when we're de-emphasizing our preconceptions, we're de-emphasizing our own experience of life in order to facilitate input and kind of facilitate a conversation. And games seem to do that in a really powerful way, or at least they can. So yeah, I think it's worth it. I mean, I know that like the games that I've made have been a little on the pretentious side. Like I'm aware of that, but like in order to get there, it's only because, you know, I haven't yet got the skill really to pare away the sharp edges and be a better dance partner over time. You know, I want to make games for people to play them. I don't want to make a game to hang in a museum after I die.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe it'll hang in the museum and they'll just play it there. That would be nice. But so you think that? So maybe as a dance partner, without meaning to, you've kind of threatened some people and made them feel like, oh, I'm not. Because the thing about pretentious, to me, whenever I hear that, and I've talked about this before, so I apologize if it's old news to frequent listeners of the show, but to me, pretentious, when somebody says that, it just means this game made me feel bad about myself because it seemed smart, maybe, and I couldn't keep up with it, so therefore I dismissed it. And so many people who play video games at this time in history anyway played them because they made them feel good about themselves. There's like two kinds of games, the kind that are just pure power fantasy where you're tearing stuff up and feeling like you're stronger than everybody else, or a game that constantly tells you like you did so good, you achieved something, it was really hard and you got beat up a lot, but by the end you feel like you did something important. And either both of those are self-esteem feeding, and then you come out with a game that's like dealing with some smart stuff that might make you feel bad, and people are like, this makes me feel bad about myself that I don't like it, and then they sometimes get rageful at you know, we've seen plenty of people get mad at Jonathan Blow or various other devs who are at least trying to feed players something that they think is like a gourmet meal. And then they go like, oh, this is snobby food, and they just toss it aside, and it's kind of counterproductive. So are you saying that if you did a better job, you wouldn't cause people to feel like threatened by what you're doing?
Maybe so, yeah. I mean, I think if my objective is to change somebody's mind, or to kind of take them to a place that they haven't yet been, and maybe I've been there, or that's the confession that I want to make, or the conversation that I want to facilitate, or the type of dance that I want to have, or the meal I want to serve, just like a kind of a fancy one or an exotic one. I think I maybe need to do more work in enticing the player, seducing their sensibilities a little bit, to kind of so we got to start on common ground in order to have these conversations, right? And so if I'm starting off imposing my sensibilities on top of yours, or trying to coerce you into behaving like me, it's just not a good way to hold a conversation. It's not a good way to lead a dance, right? So I'm glad you brought up the gourmet food thing. I'm kind of obsessed with kind of food metaphors and food analogies, because my next game is about the most fancy pants meal imaginable. It's about the most gourmet meal ever served. That's the idea. So and then the player character, I presume that the player character is kind of a meat and potatoes kind of guy, and so his dinner companions are all culinary gourmands and food thinkers and obsessors, and so hopefully it's kind of a way to do exactly literally what you're saying, which is to hopefully, if it works, we'll see, but to facilitate kind of a grand statement that a lot of people can take part in, and not just people like me, not just people with my sensibilities, or you know, you don't have to wear fancy pants to play it, I guess. Hopefully,
this sounds amazing. What do you do in a game about the best food ever?
Well, I mean, you can either eat it or not, and you decide how much to eat. But mainly, it's the dinner conversation, and so there's your dinner companions are having their own conversations. Occasionally, they'll solicit your input in an overt way, but mainly it's just, what do you have to say? If anything, you can keep your mouth shut, or you can take part, and it's really just it's nothing new. There's nothing really innovative about this game at all. It's just it's the same old tricks that I think video games can be good at. The fundamentals. It's just the dialogue tree of the game is really healthy and a lot of branches, a lot of hidden divergent content. It remembers players' thoughts and the things that they've said and tries to reflect it back to them in the context of this strange meal.
Huh. How if it's hard to put a number on it, but could people expect to finish this game in an afternoon, or is it the kind of game that,
it's pretty short as far as games go. I mean, it's not Red Dead Redemption, right? I mean, this thing's only about maybe 40 minutes, half hour, 40 minutes or so. But it's divergent enough that if you feel like it, you can return to it and kind of explore and scrub it in different ways. There's a lot on the table, but kind of like in cart life, as time kind of moves on, as a way of kind of putting on the boundaries. You don't have time to do everything in cart life. This dinner conversation is sort of the same way, right? Like maybe you can say 10 different things in response to someone's proposition, but you don't get the proposition again. You get it one time. And so in order to explore the other branches, you have to play the game again. If you feel like it, maybe the game will be so hateful and turn you off so badly that you'll never want to touch it. But if you do, for folks who have that really thorough sensibility and they like to scrub the content and suck the marrow out of a game's bones, they can do it. And it's nice and small.
Sounds awesome. Sounds perfect for at least a lot of the way people play games that I know these days, which is escapism is wonderful, but once you reach a certain point in your life, you've actually got a real life game you're playing, your own life that you're trying to win at, and you can only take so much time out of that for something that doesn't end up leveling you up or getting you somewhere. So 40 minutes.
That's true. What have games done for me lately? Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. It's a shame, but that's you see Twine really taking off.
Oh, Twine is the best. I love it dearly. So after the IGF and Cart Life is on Steam now. Everyone, I don't know why you're listening to us when you could be going to buy it and play it instead of listening to us talk about it. But my point is that so my girlfriend Jenny, she's amazing, and she was able to put forth she's a journalist, right? And she was able to put forth kind of an ethical ultimatum with her employer right around the same time at the IGF, and so like this ethical thing was coming to a head at her job, and like I'm taking off the bathrobe, and we're leaving the house once in a while, and so these things happened simultaneously. She was able to leave her job. That's the way it went, and so now she's been thinking about making games, and like it's kind of frustrating because I was hoping that she'd take a glance at some code, and she's done lots of HTML and CSS and stuff like that before, but programmatic logic has this kind of voodoo to it. A lot of folks are scared about programming. I think it's like a foreign language. I guess in a way it is, but it's really not that hard. It's easier to learn than Spanish. Anyways, my point is, she's really good at it, and that kind of like is really frustrating for me because it took me a long time, and like 6 days into Twine, Jenny already has this comprehensive understanding of programmatic logic and interreferential structure and branching paths. It's crazy how efficient this tool is at teaching just the fundamentals, and it's fun. And it does this cool thing where we're talking about branching paths, right? And you can, maybe you've seen them, you can analyze the skeletal structure of these Twine games and kind of look at their autopsies. Porpentine runs a Tumblr called Twine Garden, where you can look at the skeletons of these games. And it's funny because you really can appraise the character of these games just based on the way the paths branch. And so like you can scroll through it and be like, oh, that's Jonas's game, or that's Howling Dogs, or etc. So Twine is the best, I think.
We should people who may not know who Porpentine is, maybe you can talk about Porpentine a little bit.
Sure, yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure how to answer that. I don't know if anyone can. Porpentine is, I guess, just the bare fundamentals. Here's the story so far. An interactive fiction author and game reviewer, writes for Rock Paper Shotgun occasionally, and a couple of other places. has the best Twitter page, and is just scary and severely powerful, kind of ethereal quality, but very provocative. A lot of heat, a lot of blood in the water. So kind of poor Bintang kind of she wants to destroy everything at GDC this year. She said she articulated that sentiment in a really succinct way. It's just wants to destroy everything with these free indie games, playable. Any device that can view a web page can play a Twine game. So you don't need a proprietary electronic, anything with a web browser, you can play Twine. And there's no parser. You don't have to have this fundamental familiarity. You don't have to have like video game skill. You don't have to have parser skill, like interactive fiction, X refrigerator or look north, etc. You don't have to put in these kind of obtuse commands. It's all you're doing is clicking on hyperlinks. Mm-hmm. So it's extremely accessible. All the boundaries are being destroyed, right? It's like what you were talking before about, like all these kind of video game hallmarks and things that we hold dear as our inheritance, our video game heritage. She's throwing them all out. Big garage sale in the front yard. Everything's free.
And it's interesting to me. So many people I know, it is their language. And if you explain to someone who grew up speaking English that it's the worst language, like nobody can.
It might be. I mean, it is. I mean, English it must be so hard to learn. There's all these.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah, none of the rules are internally consistent. We're kind of stealing from a lot of really great flavors, and yeah, English is a strange language that once you start to get outside of it. So I'm told as well.
And video game language is the same. Like people, it's been kind of a mission of mine for a while to try to introduce people to video games who didn't think they were for them. You know, so many people I know my age and above, they'll play Minesweeper, they'll play Solitaire, but they say they hate video games. I'm like, that is a video game. It's just simple point and click. They don't have to be the way you think they are. So I've been trying to introduce them to games, and it's just I fall flat every time because there's these things I'm used to that I think they'll adjust to right away. Like the first Legend of Zelda, you think, anyone can play that. You just walk around and discover things. No, those octopus guys kill you in 5 seconds, and you feel like a failure, and then you put it down forever.
Right.
But Twine is getting rid of that. You don't generally lose in Twine. You just go in one direction, and it sounds like your Gourmet game. What's it going to be called?
Oh, it's called. Oh, wait, just a second. Hold on. I got to do this.
Oh, sure. Take your time. And I'll also have to ask you if you can lose in it. It doesn't sound like a losing.
Yeah, I think it's subjective. I'm going to leave that up to the player to determine for themselves whether or not they've lost the game. But it's called Blood of the Ortolan, I guess, is the name of it, which is the final dish in the meal is this weird French bird. And all the food in the game is true. It's really earthbound dishes. These are dishes that exist in the real world, and they have for kind of a while. And they have this strange shared characteristic where they're horrifying, but they're also adored by food professionals. So restaurant reviewers or chefs themselves, kind of food critics, food thinkers, culinary philosophers. They have this mystique among professionals because they don't euphemize the relationship between food and death. And so, normally instead of eating a burger, maybe you're looking the cow in the eyes as you take a bite. So it's really gross, or it seems like it's really you feel this disgust. But culinary professionals, they just can't get enough. They love it because it's honest with them in a way that they're not used to being honest. So kind of negotiating that is of interest. So right now the trick is to avoid being either exclusionary in a way that using language that maybe is repels people or uninvites them, and also I don't have any interest in like proclaiming a vegetarian screed or a vegan like commercial, for example. Like that's not my interest here. It's trying to kind of isolate the shared characteristics of all of these sensibilities of food, give them to the diners to have their conversation, and then the player can take part in a variety of ways. That's the idea, anyways. I don't know if that answers your question or not. It's kind of rambly.
No, it's amazing. I don't know where to go with it next. There's so many places I can go. How is it going to look? Is it going to have a look?
Yeah, it's kind of cartoony. I mean, I could, yeah, I could show you like a screencast thing if you feel like it. If you want to give it a shot, I don't know how sound would work, but I can just poke around. Yeah, let's see.
Trying is fun. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a Grey's Anatomy book.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of research. I don't know if you're picking that up or not. The audio.
No audio.
Oh, okay.
And is it something you've been interested in a while? Food?
Yeah, well, I suppose. I mean, it really wasn't until my girlfriend Jenny came into my life. I mean, before that, I was just eating ramen noodles and with ketchup on them and no sauce pack, and you drain the water. It's really nutritious. It also doubles as packing material, and it's very cheap, of course.
Sure.
So,
wow.
That's kind of the idea. But yeah, Jenny came into my life and she watched the Food Network and Iron Chef and Top Chef and these things. And I realized these people are, not only are they like young and beautiful and articulate, but they're really artists in a way. But it's also like, can food be art? What's the point? Like, you destroy it by eating it, and it's expensive and exclusionary. Can't really survive or have a long life, you know? So the idea of like food as art was hilariously absurd to me. And yet, so I'm kind of navigating that neurosis here. Jenny adores food in a way that I'll never understand it. But I was a dessert chef for a while, for about 2 years here in Seattle. And so like, I don't know, like I feel like, but I feel as though I have a strange relationship with food, but I think that's kind of true of everybody. It's a weird thing that we do. And a lot of our neuroses manifest in food in this way. Like there's, it kind of builds up on the plate.
Sure.
You know?
I'm fascinated with the game. We should stop. I want to see you again. Can I see you again, Richard? Yeah, the game looks great, but I'm going to just be reading and looking at good graphics. You make all those graphics?
Yeah. Oh, of course, yeah. Kind of going through it. So this is just the prototype build. It's in AGS, but I think I'm going to move it over to Unity so that more people can play it. And that's kind of tricky. So the Unity version has an interesting kind of 2D, 3D thing going on where it's on the horizontal plane, like a typical point and click adventure game of the old school variety, and yet kind of as that like aesthetic sensibility matures into the new materials of 3D games, and I don't know. I've got to grow up a little bit to make this thing happen. We'll see.
Huh. So you're looking to make this game more grown up in a way than prior games?
Well, than mine, anyways. You know, I'll leave it up to you if you know if it serves any good to anybody other than me. I'll leave it up to you and Pinsuff, I guess.
Huh. Oh, Alistair Pinsuff. Yeah. He reviewed your game for Destructoid, and it seemed to me, I'd have to ask him personally, it seemed to me that he felt like a game that might have made him feel bored or bad, that is something to ding it for. Mm-hmm. That you don't make people feel bored or bad in games. But when I played it, I thought, like, this guy probably intended for me to empathize with the characters, and I wouldn't be empathizing with the life of a true street vendor if I didn't feel bored or bad some of the time. So to me, I just took it as, to use a food metaphor, because they're fun. You have to have some bitter, or you have to have some palate cleansing in order for the real flavors to hit later, the more pleasurable times. And there are parts of cart life that are just plain fun, at least for me. The sense of ambition, the sense of hope that maybe you grow in this trap that you're in. And then from there, oftentimes you end up feeling terrible, which made sense.
I'm glad to hear you put it that way. I mean, I'll be honest about my intentions. I didn't want to make a game that wasn't fun. I don't want to depress people, and I don't want to preach at them. I want to, like I said, I want to facilitate a conversation about something that we have in common, and something that we have in common. I guess the easiest place for me to start is money. At the time that I made the game, everybody I knew was sweating their next rent payment. All of my friends and coworkers and acquaintances, everybody's broke. And from what we saw, and in 2008, 2009, it was only going to get worse in the foreseeable future. And so I wanted to talk about that in the form of a game, give people a chance to experiment with money in the real world. And so I don't want to make them feel awful. I don't want to coerce their sympathy by making them feel guilty. But it doesn't work for everybody. And like I said, I mean, if it were a more well-made game, I think that kind of distinction would be easier to navigate. The game has a lot of shortcomings, bugs and stuff, and it is kind of preachy in some ways. It's not the game I'd like it to be, but you gotta let it go.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you want to move towards something better, but to me, it's fantastic as is. I wouldn't change a thing about it. Just like I wouldn't change a thing about the first Legend of Zelda. I love that game. But I tried having my wife play it, and that's not her language. And I think you gave people a game that they think they love video games. They think that's their language, but Cart Life was in a slightly different language than they're used to, but maybe one that's more palatable to people who don't play video games all the time. I've introduced it to a lot of people who say they hate all video games. They like Super Flirt Off, though. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
is that a good game?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had them on the show last year, I think. So people who want to play Super Flirt Off, I found, will want to play Cart Life and get really engrossed in these characters, and they're relatable and funny, but at the same time, there's a conversation about some things that are pretty sad that we all have to deal with. And money, though, the richest people I know, and I know some, strangely enough, I know some millionaires, they treat life like a video game, and they get so mad when they lose like $200.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you're on God mode, but one guy just happened to get one punch in, and you lose like a sliver of health, you like freak out. So even the richest of people I know are obsessed with money and still angry about it. Then everyone else I know who actually has to worry about money, they're pretty sad about it too. It's a sad subject, generally speaking.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, the parallels between our video game education, or like Jane McGonigal says, we have the secondary education through games. We spend as much time in games as we do in the classroom or with our nose in a book, right? So like the parallel, like what are points? What's it's really originated as a commercial hook to so that you'd be competitive at a pinball machine or an arcade, right? And then you'd spend more money to be the best. So you're spending money, kind of the idea of spending time and money in order to conquer this thing or claim domain over it, right? And so it's really just a way to quantify how much time and money you've spent, and also like your innate health and insight and your video game skill. So it's points are fundamentally like they're a means of stratifying players against one another in the way that it's inherited from class distinction and money. I think it is, and so maybe in a game on like a home console, it takes on a different spirit. When we had like Atari and NES games with scores, it wasn't for the same reason. It was more for like your personal best. Or, maybe you could take a photograph of your television and compare them with your friends or something like that. But you're not spending money to continue playing it, and so the spirit of it changes a bit. And they become a little bit more arbitrary, more abstract. It's like what are points now? I don't even know. I don't play massively multiplayer online games, but I imagine that they're full of these stratifying devices, right? Like expensive gear or rarefied characteristics or cosmetics or something, like maybe the hats in Team Fortress or something like that. I'm not sure. You'd have to tell me.
Sure, I play them a little bit. I guess the closest I come to is Animal Crossing, which I play the hell out of Animal Crossing. I'll play that all night. And it did give me, for me, Animal Crossing helped me to remember how stupid money is, because you get to a certain point where you're like, what am I going to buy now? You play it enough and you fish hard enough. Like I just love the fishing in that game. It's the tactile feel of it and the timing. It's almost like a little drum solo every time. And then you're up. Feels great. But I ended up a multi-billionaire in that game, and what did it do for me? What do points really do for you? Not a ton. But sometimes you have to get all the points to find that out, which is kind of depressing.
That's true.
You have to waste all that time. We didn't talk enough about what got you into what games. You mentioned Yahtzee, and you mentioned what one? Oh, I'm blanking on it already. It was Yahtzee and
maybe Cactus.
Cactus. Yeah. Who else makes games, either big or small, commercial or independent, that you find interesting?
Yeah, I've got a big appetite these days, and I try to to step outside of the bubble of indie games as much as possible, and read a lot of poetry and a lot of literary fiction, a lot of historical stuff, watch a lot of strange movies and weird music. I think that's pretty important to kind of cross-train, if you will. I mean, I get to sit here in a bathrobe and drink coffee and tell myself that I'm doing research, and I'm just enjoying myself. As long as it lasts, I'm going to keep regarding that shit as research.
Sure.
But in the form of games, I mean, there's so much good stuff. It's impossible to keep up. And when we have all of these, even just with the explicit shared interest of indie games, there's like 2 or 3 unbelievably good festivals a month with very little shared content between them. I mean, that was just, like I said, the UCLA Games Art Festival was unbelievably good. Lots of really vibrant, strange games. Not even all video games, a lot of board games and just kind of meat space participatory stuff that could be called a game. That was just strange and new and but there's Indiecade, IGF, Fantastic Fest, that Amaze Fest in Germany. I'm told was super good this year. I really wanted to go, but I didn't have my passport, and it's expensive to go to these things. But I guess my point is there's so much food on the table. These things are being made faster than our means of curating them, right? Mm-hmm. And so we, like I said, I mean, that's another reason that we're kind of counting on you, is that trying to find all the good content or play things that will fulfill us is it's tricky because there's so much food on the table. It's infinite buffet. You can just eat all you want. But for me, let's see. I'll always love Jake Elliott, Cardboard Computer. Everything Jake does somehow gets me right in the heart. Kentucky Route Zero, the new one, they keep teasing us, but the new installment of Kentucky Route Zero is coming soon, or so I'm told. If you haven't played it yet, I couldn't recommend it more highly. Also, if you're not sure if Kentucky Route Zero is for you, or if you want to, if it's going to be worth the price tag, I'd suggest seeking out something called Limits and Demonstrations, which is, I'm not even sure how to describe it in the context of it, but it's kind of maybe an appetizer for the meal of Kentucky Route Zero, if you will. Maybe it's a little supplementary content, but it's free. It's very terse, and that way you can find out if you want to spend the money. It's so good. I love it dearly. Let's see. Anything by Anna Anthropy that she's working on. She just released an amazing choose your own adventure book, and it's a physical copy. It's huge, big, glossy thing. It's great illustrations inside of it, and it has the best choose your own adventure punchline on the first page. It's so good. I don't want to ruin it. It's
Starwinch, right?
Yeah, Starwinch. It's so good. And just the very first page of Starwinch is super, super great. But man, I'm kind of been going through Edo Stern's games, and they're all they're kind of hard to get your mitts on, but you can see some good videos online. And they're very strange and divergent, but also and let's see. Man, there's so many good games. Gone Home is coming out soon. Man, these Twine games. Ludum Dare just happened. Of course, there's so many good Ludum Dare games. Tons of them. Tons of really good ones. And there's just so much good games right now.
This is why they need to be 40 minutes. Because it's impossible to get through. I mean, I find this, trying to find people to be on the show. We're booked. I've been kind of lazy lately, but I'm booked in my mind until at least August. And we were booked until July, way back in February. It never ends because there's so many voices out there that are interesting and so much content. But it's on me to curate it. Oh, that's hard. That's really. I hope that we can open up the curation somehow. I'm hoping there can be ways that more people can be the curator.
Twitter's great. It's great for for that specific purpose. I mean, and I guess Twitter has this kind of compounding curation problem, right? Where you have to decide who you follow, and then based on kind of the water temperature of what you've chosen to listen to, you can kind of find harmonies. And so like GeoGuessr is my favorite thing to do right now if I don't want to work and I want to avoid work and I want to play a game. There's a game called GeoGuessr, and it just plops you down somewhere in the world, and you have to figure out where you are. And it's Google Maps, and so you can move around, you can point the camera, you can even scoot around if you feel like it. I think that's cheating, but everybody plays it a little different. And so you're like, well, like, and so I play with my girlfriend, right? I'm like, where are we, Jenny? And she says, it's Portuguese. No, it's Spanish. But the cars are driving on the right side of the road. There's no mountains. There's no, and there's Coke logos everywhere. So you have to figure out just where in the world in Google Maps you've been plopped down, and then you guess, you put your pinpoint on a map, and then based on how close you are to the actual place, you get points, and then you try to get as many points possible in a round. And it's such a simple conceit. It's free. Anything that can look at a Google map through a web browser can play GeoGuessr. And it's so funny hearing folks kind of, it came to me through Twitter and through this email list, and it's if a game can get inside and really lick somebody's aortal cavity, like it's going to manifest in Twitter or by email, or maybe you'll talk about it, or I will on this show or something. Like, they'll find their way to the surface somehow. I think good ones will.
I hope so. I like to think that the cream will rise to the top, but I always worry that so much of it has to do with this kind of collective unconscious we have and what it's hungry for. And for whatever reason, the way culture, it's like a big amoeba, and right now it's full of shooters. So everyone's mad at shooters and hated shooters, and we're mad at BioShock Infinite for being a shooter. So now, and this works for me just fine, it seems like the collective amoeba is moving towards empathy. It's like, let's eat the empathy games and let's take that on as part of our identity, which is why I think Cart Life, not that it's not a great game, but it was also in the right place at the right time, where people were like, let's finally use a game to, instead of escaping from our sucky lives, let's go into someone else's life and see, maybe it sucks too, but at least you'll get to know what another human being is. There's some worth to that. Collecting points in terms of points of people you've related to and lives you've understood before you're dead is something I like to do. That's why I do this show in part. I feel like the more people I get to know, the more collective points I've got in terms of life quality. And you gave people that opportunity with Cart Life. Is that something that you had a sense was happening in terms of gaming culture, that people wanted to get empathy out of their games, or was it just a happenstance?
If it was happening, and it may have been, I just simply didn't know about it. I think it's just blind coincidence, right? It's just luck. Just slipped on the right banana peel at the right time. But it seemed like an obvious problem to me, as someone who played a lot of games and then stopped playing them because they didn't satisfy me. Like I was kind of angry at the at what I was getting, which is stupid because I was only playing like the most visible mass market, highly advertised, very aggressively remarked upon games. And so I was like kind of naive for complaining about what I was given because I wasn't investigating very thoroughly. But nonetheless, I wanted to make Cart Life because I thought I say this all the time, I really thought I was the first person to think, instead of making a game about guns, let's make a game about human beings. And I don't need to be a space marine. Like, planet Earth is good enough for me. Talking to you and having a conversation with a fellow human is always good enough for me. And so let's make a game to facilitate experimentation in that way. And what if I was gonna live life through somebody else? And games can do these things that books and movies and poetry do well, and maybe they can do them better by means of accommodating player choice. Player choice is this incredibly magical ingredient that the whole thing just blooms in totally new ways. We don't even have good language for it, and so it seems to come up. It never gets old on this perennial thing. Even every new good game that comes out, it seems like these issues come up. What is a game? Is this a game? Can games be art? Free will. What is free will? Like these sophomoric kind of quandaries that don't really have answers. I think it's the mark of a good game. And so, like, just people will say, well, is Dysphoria a game? Is Proteus a game? Is it's that browser candy game? Have you played that one with the text?
Candy Crush?
Yeah, Candy Crush.
Oh, no.
Candy Crush is super good. And like these things, I mean, they're dear to me, but it's frustrating to see these debates kind of manifest repeatedly. You know what I mean? But also, it's kind of encouraging because it means that what we have here is new enough that we don't have sufficient language to contain it or to facilitate it. We don't have good enough words for it. We need new language. We need new culture. We have to facilitate our own. We have to synthesize our own vocabulary at this point. And so, so I think we have to have crazy people. We have to have like crazy, insane, rebellious outcasts in order to kind of scout the territory for us a little bit, I think. So it's a really exciting time to be involved. But maybe, I mean, like the filter bubble of indie games and video games at large, it's got a really thick membrane on it. And so these debates are happening in every discipline, I think, in education or medicine or textiles or military research or food ethics. The internet, this kind of like shared global communication in real time has changed. It's changed everything. We have to completely comprehensively reevaluate the experience of life and how we feel about other people. So I think you're absolutely right about this empathy thing, because that's question number one. Like, now we actually can see, if we want to, we can see how big the world is and how many other humans. There's so many humans in the world, and it's so big, and there's a lot. So yeah, I mean, the kind of reconfiguring our scope for the world is it's tough, but I think games can do it.
And people are excited about doing it. You see that movie Avatar, directed by James Cameron?
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, that movie. But when I first heard about it, I was like, it's video game the movie. You get to be the body of something else. And
that's right.
And that's what people, with the internet, with avatars on the internet, people wanted to be able to do that. So many people use the internet just because they're, on some level, obsessed with getting to know other people and getting to understand people, which is a wonderful obsession to have. It's just, sadly, on the internet, it also turns to the exact opposite of empathy, which is anger and feeling threatened and feeling like all of the internet is just a non-playable character that you can treat like garbage. That's a metaphor I've been using for a little while now.
No, it's true. Like this, like solipsism it's a strange thing, especially when it manifests online. I'm really interested to hear like your thoughts on like hate mail and flaming and trolling and toxicity and poison. Like I'm finally starting. Finally, it's been a long time coming, but I'm finally starting to get a lot of hate mail, like just in the last couple of weeks. And like, if I'm getting this much and people are this mad at me, it makes me like, I know it's cheesy, but the first thing I think is like, I can't imagine what it must be like being a woman dev or like a trans female or even like a black guy. Any kind of like minority that like a different voice or a different sensibility or just different in any way from this recipe, this heritage of games. It's like, if I'm getting this, like my game isn't, I feel like it's really not that weird compared to, some of the stuff that's out there. It's not as challenging, or it's not as provocative, or it's not as hot, new, or transgressive, or, it's not as coercive. It's not as, you know what I mean? And so like,
it's pretty successful though. That's where the threat,
maybe so. Yeah.
I think so. I mean, No More Heroes has work in it. There's a lot of games about working a job.
Yep.
I personally like No More Heroes 2 a lot. I thought the jobs were a kind of funny critique of how stupid work is in general. I can never pronounce it right. There's another shopkeeper game called, I think it's
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few, but they didn't threaten people because they weren't treated like they were doing something new and interesting. They were just kind of like, oh yeah, it's a weird game that you don't have to pay attention to. But as soon as you started changing the way people think about video games, or people started saying that you were doing that, then people got mad at you. And it took them a little while for them to notice, but it doesn't surprise me that the hate mail started to come in now.
Yeah, I mean, I can live with it. And to be fair, like a lot of the objections to Cart Life are totally legitimate. Game has a lot of bugs, especially for like a commercial product that's not up to the technical standard of like Steam's audience, for example. Like they, if they have a diet of mass market, very scrutinized games made by a team of disciplined, career-minded professionals, like that, those things are so seaworthy and highly polished. They're like speedboats, and Cart Life's kind of a rickety canoe by comparison, right? And so it's kind of understandable. A lot of the objections are of the technical variety, and it seems to, like, I kind of feel guilty for maybe making this argument with such a poor vessel. A game that crashes a lot, or it has kind of like it's screen tearing. It doesn't play well on like extremely huge high definition monitors, for example. Like it plays better on kind of crappy old computers like mine. And so
to me, it's all just part of the package. That's my personal interpretation of it. If you showed your priorities by making it that seamless, it would have taken maybe a little bit away from me. But I'm not the kind of guy that, like, when somebody spells poorly, I like them a little bit more. That's me. I can relate with that. So for me, that was part of the message. But I can see why people who are, like you said, they take that as a sign of disrespect. That's what gets you hate mail, when people somehow feel like you made them feel lesser. Just for playing your game. Like, there's a bug in this game and I paid for it. That makes me a worse purchaser. I'm mad at the man who sold me a thing that wasn't immaculate. And they freak out on you.
I understand. Yeah, and in a way, like I really understand. And it's like I feel like it's kind of a shame, of course. I mean, not just because I'm the guy getting shat on, but because I did a poor job facilitating that and like accommodating their access into the game, right? And so, like, if I say that I don't want to depress people, I make them feel bad. And so when that happens, or people take Cart Life as just a guilt trip or health food, I'm not mad at the haters. I'm mad at my own shortcomings. I'm frustrated that it's not as well made as I wanted it to be.
I can't help but want to use the Peter Dinklage metaphor for you. You're familiar with it's Peter Dinklage, isn't it? Or is it Robert?
It's Peter, I think.
Yeah, he's a short man. If he were a tall man, who would care? I mean, nothing against Dinklage. He's a great actor, but it's his shortcomings that make him who he is. And the things that you want to change about Cart Life, I'm excited that you're going to move forward and be motivated by the urge to make more people engage in the conversation with you. But I hope you never go back and do like a George Lucas on Cart Life and like special effects you wanted and stuff like that. I take it.
I might be guilty of doing it a little bit already. I mean, when the IGF nominations were announced and Steam had a distribution deal with the company that owns the IGF, they put it on that all the nominees would get Steam contracts if they wanted them, if they so chose to say, to acquiesce and say yes, which I did because I want riches. I want to be stupid and wealthy and sit in a hot tub and eat Cheetos for the rest of my life. I do, but in order to get there, we got to put this thing on Steam. And so, where was I going with this? So I changed it. Yeah. So in order to try to get the game up to the technical standards of a Steam audience, of a bigger world, I tried to sew up a lot of the most glaring problems with it. And after I made these changes and I was reading the bug fix update list, a lot of them are really strange because Cart Life is, it's a mundane game set in the real world, or it's supposed to be. And so some of the bugs and the descriptive language of how they were fixed is kind of funny. But I guess a main one, here's one. It's kind of a funny story for me anyways, but I'll try to be terse. So there was a problem with the decimal on some international keyboards. When you typed in the amount of change for customers, you have to give them change, right, at the end of the sale. and it wouldn't read the decimal correctly, and so it would tell you that you were putting in the wrong answer no matter what you typed because it wasn't reading it correctly. And so I thought, all right, throw away how you type in the change. We'll give you an actual cash register, and you just use the mouse and you click on, the $10 bill, the 5, 4 ones, and then quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, right? And it's better, and I think it's better, but it's it's kind of not a major change, but the core component of the game is the sale in the stand, in the cart, in the life, and it all kind of focused, all the way down through all of this telescoping lens is the customer transaction, and at the heart of that is making change to the final part. So it's kind of a cornerstone of the game. And there's a bug where, like when the cash register comes down, if the key is still jingling when you click on it, it won't open. It jams shut or something. Sometimes you'll open the register and there won't be any money inside of it. And so, like, I took this thing and was trying to make it better, as I'm sure Lucas was, trying to make things better, trying to make a better argument, make a better case for his vision or whatever.
Sure.
And he ends up kind of making a misstep, or and so now, like, maybe it's I think it's better now, even with this kind of like technical hitch. I think it's a better, fuller argument. But nonetheless, like a lot of the like the Steam message boards or the emails that I get are my own message boards. Like a lot of the conversations about fixing bugs and kind of sewing up loose ends. But like not only am I sick of cart life, frankly, like I want to work on the new one, but also like these problems entail further thought in a way that big things have to be rethought. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to just let it go. Kind of just want to let it be faulty and exist in the past, the time in which it was made, and if it's never going to be perfect, it's never going to be up to those technical standards. But I'm glad you're willing to kind of give it the benefit of the doubt in that way. It's nice to hear.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I'm excited you're going to push forward as opposed to further shaving away your sculpture until maybe it wouldn't end up looking like the same piece at all. So that's
right. Well, I mean, some games have done this well. I think like Dear Esther, I think is a good example. So like there was the mod Stanley Parable as well. There's a couple of games that do this really well, where they had a notion and they can confess it in just a way that they thought was interesting or funny, or they did it for its own sake, and it resonated with people in ways that they didn't expect. It's kind of a common story throughout these games. And then for Stanley Parable and for Dear Esther, and there's many others, this kind of complete reimagining or a more thorough material incarnation of these ideas was found necessary enough that they could make the argument in a more accessible way or a more appealing way. The emphasis on how it looks, how smooth it plays, paring away the production value, a lot of scrutiny and discipline and thought and craft to put forth these ideas, which are found to work in a better way, like a more complete way. And so, like, I love the Dear Esther original mod. There's a lot to it that there's a lot there that's worth loving that was kind of cut off or pared away in the big one. But the big release of Dear Esther, there's nothing like it. There never will be again. It's unbelievably good, and it's a better argument. It's more useful, I think, in facilitating this kind of maybe showing games to people who don't play them. Like Dear Esther and Stanley Parable are kind of my two go-tos, and Dysphoria and some Twine games as well. So I kind of always keep them in my pocket so that I can show them to especially women who say that they don't play games they don't like to, even though they've got Angry Birds on their phone, right? Like, I don't play games. And so, like, I think that these ones are good examples to go to, and it's because they've been polished so completely that they're really inviting. And that's, I think, the characteristic that really gets elevated is how inviting these games are. And Cart Life is never going to be inviting. That's not my intention. It's really a game for game players.
I thought it was totally inviting. I felt so invited. Yeah. Well, I love that.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, the art direction and art design I thought was just it made you. Any times when I was stuck in a problem that just didn't feel good to me anymore, I would just look at the game and be like, yeah, I want to keep playing this. I just like looking at it. It's very nicely done.
Thanks. Thank you.
There's a bunch of my pleasure. A bunch of questions came in. I'm going to ask them in a second, but I'm very curious about something you said before. Just I want people to feel like you're a real human being as much as possible.
Well, I don't know.
It's hard. You seem.
I'll do my best.
You're not. You don't 100% seem of this earth. I feel a little bit like I'm. Have you seen Earth Girls or Easy?
Yeah.
It's pretty decent. I kind of feel like you're on Jeff Goldblum's level. It's like the language you use, and it's very fun to speak with you. But I want to make sure people.
I'll take that as a compliment, regardless of how you intended it. I will take that as a compliment.
I love Goldblum. I wish my wife is constantly stacking me up against Goldblum.
Ooh, that's
it's impossible.
Can't be done.
What games did you play before? You mentioned that you used to play kind of the more well-known, well-marketed games, then you stopped. So what were some of the games that you grew up playing?
Well, let's see. My brother and I, my older brother's name's Tony, and he's in the game as well. We in Cart Life as a character. He's the guy who forgets his wallet all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did that because one time ever, he never forgets his wallet, but one time he did, and it was he said he was going to treat me to a bunch of beers when I came home to Missoula. Beers on me, and we had beers, and he's like, "Oh, I forgot my wallet," and I said, "Okay, I'll get it. Don't worry about it, man. No problem." At the cost of eternal ridicule, worldwide ridicule forever. People are going to be like, "Damn it, Tony! Don't forget your what." Anyways, that's it. So I played these games with my brother, and we played on the old Atari and Nintendo. And growing up, we played all these kind of just having excuses to spend time together and fight and try to brotherly stuff. Play, like video games. We were broke as kids. My family was kind of broke growing up and bounced around the country a lot, and ended up in Montana. My dad drove trains, and so we were like kind of, I had great parents. My family life was great. Amazing childhood. I wouldn't have said so at the time. I thought it was awful, and I thought it was hell, but it was really good. But anyways, my point is, my dad was kind of a culture geek and a computer guy from way back in the day, and so we always had these kind of things to experiment with as kids. And we did get a little bit of the games are frivolous, so go outside and like get your hands dirty, get a few grass stains. It's healthy for you. But not as much as other kids did. I think our parents were more willing to see that games could be worthwhile. And I'm like only starting to now realize how lucky we are as like my brother and two sisters that we had parents that were like willing to let us kind of take this thread in a far direction. So we played a lot of weird games and a lot of like Little Computer People was an Atari ST game that Cart Life stole very heavily from. And it's just the game. The conceit of the game is super simple. You have a cutaway view of this guy's house, which I stole from Melanie's house, or paraphrased it anyways. It's kind of an homage. And so he just walks around and he does his own thing, and you can like make suggestions to him or ask him to do things. And sometimes he just doesn't feel like it. So you're like, our little computer person's name was Gaylord, and I'd say you have to type it in. You have to type in like you're IMing him. You're like, Gaylord, would you play me a song? And sometimes he would just shake his head, and sometimes he'd be like, all right, and then he'd go play something and he'd be like, And so he had this notion of free will, like that you're not an exclusive control. You don't have an avatar, but this thing exists with its own volition, its own identity, and you can interact with it in the way that you interact with the person is really, I guess, cool to me. And it was really well done, well made game. And so also growing up, I played sports games and racing games and shooters and stuff. And so I have all these skills. I say this all the time. I have this military vocabulary that I'm never going to use. I'm really good at driving a car unreasonably fast. I do have that skill in life because I played too many racing games, but you can't use that skill in real life. It turns out that's against the law, and then you get fined a bunch of money, and then you go to jail if you drive a car too fast. And these are lessons I kind of learned the hard way. So I wish that I would have had a game like Cart Life to hide from my parents as a kid, because I wanted to know how to live. I wanted to know what alcohol was, or what people, like real human beings, look like in the shower after a day's work. The stuff that's hidden from children, kids are going to find out anyways. But I would have liked to have had a game like Cart Life as a kid, and that's why I wanted to make it.
That's awesome. That's building up to this conversation. I've been thinking a lot about Earthbound and Zach McCracken. I don't know if you played either.
Oh,
of
yeah.
those.
Yeah.
But
Good
those
ones.
were my, like, this is what real life is like games when I was younger. Especially Zach McCracken. I'm like, what am I going to be like as an adult man? I'm a weird man. I'm always going to be a weird man. And now that I think about it, he was a tabloid reporter. I'm a video game journalist. He was writing about two-headed squirrels and discovering kind of the secret world going on beneath the surface.
So that's why you're so eager to relegate me to outer space. So you can more clearly fulfill your role as Zach McCracken. Okay, I understand.
Zach McCracken, maybe. And Cart Life gave me the feeling as an adult that I got both of those games as a kid, which was like I'm getting a little piece of life. And of course, as I grew up, I didn't realize. I found out that life wasn't really like Earthbound exactly, but yeah.
But kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Still kind of. I'm looking forward to playing it again. It's coming out on the Wii U, I guess, later this year.
Really?
Okay, I'm finally going to do questions.
Yes.
I've really been talking your ear off. I apologize, question askers. Some nerd asks, in contrast to Twine, have you had to explore new areas in your art techniques to fit with your game designs?
Oh, yeah. It's real tempting to stick. I mean, once you get the pixel stuff, it's real tempting to just do that forever. And so, like this next game, the food game, Ortolan, it was originally just pixels, and it was really good pixel art. I was really fond of it. I spent hours and hours animating, pushing these little squares around and stuff. And it's not the aesthetic of the game. It's not the interests of this game. It's more sensual. It's more slimy, and it's more wet. The idea of the pixels in Cart Life was to think really hard about the simplification that games impose. And so the way that pixels simplify, the materials, and we can get an idea of something, and we can fill in the blanks through pixels and big squares with sharp corners, and we look into that square and we see a human eyeball, right? That simplification Cart Life does for the whole human life. And so pixels were really essential to it. The material of games and the way they simplify things, pixels was the right answer, I think. And that's why I did it. And so for the food game, pixels weren't the right answer. It's not about simplification. It's about complexity. It's about slimy wetness and sensual, unexpected, things. So, yeah, absolutely. And just even beyond the visual stuff, the Cart Life soundtrack was chiptunes, and it was concerned about games and things. The Ortolan soundtrack is dynamic. I've kind of been stealing from David Kanega and a lot of really talented composers who are most interested in games' unique potential to have a dynamic soundtrack. You can't score a video game the way you can score a movie or a stage play. In order for the game to really fulfill its potential, this music has to change to reflect the player choice, right? to reflect the changing circumstances. And so if you're very hesitant, or you don't want to take part in the meal, or you're skeptical, or you remain distant, the music is very dry and staccato. It's all piano. It's kind of a dry tango on piano. But if you eat all of the food, it becomes a little more nebulous. The music gets more wet. There's more sustain in the piano, and then suddenly maybe some vibraphones come in, some more sensual depth to the music. And so it's intended to reflect your path through the game. And so the music has to change. And that was a big part of it too. So kind of scrutinizing, some nerd asked, I guess I would say yes. Short answer, yes.
If somebody were to come along and say, Richard, I can make your game look wetter. Yeah. Give me all of your art assets. I'm going to wet them. I'm going to add so many shines and so many lumps and just make it look like a more. Would you want to take that wet help, or would you say, no, this is going to be the game that I can make wet, and it's my wet message, not for anyone else to help me speak?
Well, I guess generally I'm willing to accept wet help in most contexts, and I'm always willing to share my own wetness, I suppose. So I would say yes and yes to both of those.
Okay, you may be getting some emails with the subject header "wet help," and I will help wet your work any second now. And Frank's Wrist Deep Quest.
I'm sorry, one more time.
That's a question, asker. Anne Frank's Wrist Deep Quest, it's hard to say out loud, asks, how do you feel about games that put their message above having fun? Do you think the most important aspect of games is fun or interactivity? That's interesting.
Yeah.
To say that fun, because for people who love video games and take it as just common knowledge that they're worth playing, they think the interactivity equals fun because that's
Right.
their preference.
Mhm.
But interactivity isn't always fun for people, and
Right.
vice versa.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. How would you want to take that question?
No, I think I'm with you. But I don't think that they're necessarily exclusive from one another. I think that they can amplify or clarify each other, and that's where we're at right now. Is that we're exploring how to do both, and the idea that you can, like, stupid fun doesn't have to be stupid. I think a lot of my favorite games seem to kind of try to start from the place that those notions are divergent, and then unite them somehow anyways. It's like an unlikely romance story. I think Dysphoria does it. Thomas Was Alone might be a good example, because you have these shapes and jumping around and the simple puzzle solving platforming mechanics, and then this story which seems separate, and it seems kind of like maybe wallpapered around it. But then as you get into the game, you start to realize why this story has a resonance, and that maybe these things can have an unlikely harmony with one another. I think it's really cool. I like that game a lot for that reason. Cat That Got the Milk does that as well. Cat in the Coup, I think. There's lots of good ones. A lot of Twine games do it too. This idea that the sensual pleasure of reading a good book is the opposite of playing a game, and you have to make a choice about which activity you want to do. Like, am I going to play CNC Generals or am I going to read Karamazov, right? And you have to choose. You're like, what am I in the mood for? What am I up for right now? Or maybe I want to watch The Wire. Maybe I want to watch an Adam Sandler movie or something. Or maybe I just want to listen to Reggie Watts records. And so you have to make a choice. But you don't. Games, they can unite these things. Sure, they can put all these characters in a room together. But they can make music together. They can do interesting things. So I don't think they're necessarily divergent. I think they can do it. But that said, meaning does it for me probably more than anything else. I guess I'm kind of being coy about it. I want games to rock my world, and that's kind of true about the books that I read, music that I listen to. But that's
Sure.
not everybody's that way, and I understand that.
Well, it's I think everyone is that way. I'm going to make a blanket statement about all human beings. It's universally true. I decided everyone wants their world rocked, but what's the difference between the guy with 2 PhDs and me? The guy with 2 PhDs loved just reading all those books. That was his fun.
Yeah.
He was having the frickin' time of his life reading books. And people who love video games, that's their fun. And, we all have our different funs, but other people, one man's fun is another man's work.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, I guess when I think of people who wouldn't, who don't like their world rocked, I'm thinking of maybe coworkers I used to have in different jobs, a lot of line cooks or, drywall guys, pipe setters, concrete guys, photojournalists, some of them, big small town photogs, editors, some musicians even, bartenders. And so maybe you get enough challenge and stimulation from your day-to-day job that you just want some kind of consistent comfort in your leisure life.
Sure.
And so you just want some routine, some comfort, some stability, some consistency. And because, entertainment, from what I've read about the way that military troops entertain themselves is kind of that way. They just they want domain, and they want I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe there's
makes perfect sense to me. I work during the day as a social worker in a psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
And the last thing I want to do after that is have a deep conversation with anyone. That muscle has been flexed. So if you're,
here we are though. I appreciate that about you. I mean, we're here. I'm glad you're willing to kind of meet me halfway on this. That's
Oh, I asked you to be on the show. I was excited about it. So,
That's
but
my pleasure.
for me, it's you getting to talk and I get to listen. But sometimes I get excited and talk too. I should stop doing that.
I want to hear your thoughts. I don't want to just talk to you. I want to hear.
Well, then
and
I'll do it.
let's hear some more questions. How about?
Yeah, them too. They want to talk too. Tony Perelio asks, what pieces of media outside of games, books, movies, media, you talked about this a little bit, have influenced you the most when it comes to creating games? Yeah, if there are any, so hard, I think, to look inside yourself and measure like, oh, that helped me the most. That helped me a little bit. But when you get that question asked to you, what immediately pops to your head?
Well, yeah, I guess. All right. So, I mean, this is going to condemn me. Like, this is sufficiently damnable evidence for a conviction of me being pretentious and snooty, because I like that stuff in my leisure. Like, I enjoy kind of this grand philosophical sentiment or this kind of thread. So I like the Brothers Karamazov, and I like Billy Collins and Kay Ryan, or American poets. I like Ed Leahy, who's a poet. I like American poetry and short stories. Let's see, Tom Waits' music, Jason Webley, and Amanda Palmer, and kind of this contemporary classical thing, like Philip Glass, Michael Nyman, kind of like this repetitive American contemporary minimalist classical music is super good. Really like a lot of strange music, the weirdest stuff that's out there, like Brazilian funk in the 70s is unbelievably good, and like Cantonese movie soundtracks from the 70s and 80s are super good. I don't know. I mean, see, like I have this explicit interest in diversifying my tastes because, if my diet is going to determine the output that I have, I want to make sure that I'm not only getting the easy answers. I want to see what people have done all over the world. And now we can do that. We still have the material evidence of the work that they've done, and we can acquaint ourselves with kind of their investigations. And so, I don't know. I spend a lot more time than I should in research, but really I'm just, watching Netflix in a bathrobe. So it's...
Well, to me, that's what's the difference between that study and the PhD guy I was talking about before? That's what he enjoys. He went off to the PhD not because he thought, I'm going to get rich and famous, most of them anyway, because it's too much work just for that. There's other ways to be rich and famous. But he went after it because it felt good to do it. And you go after Brazilian funk for the same reasons. And your output is you are what you eat, and you're putting out stuff that people also want to eat. And hopefully they'll put out stuff that I want to eat. Hopefully everyone will get to eat. I hope
exactly. So. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you put it away. I mean, again, I really like these food metaphors, and what you eat is really kind of a scary notion, isn't it? Because that means that before you eat it, I don't know, you have this inherent guilt in being alive. To presume to live is to be guilty. No matter what you eat. Even if it's even like a vegan or a vegetarian diet, for me, it's not a sufficient answer to that question of guilt, because you're still depriving somebody who needs it more than you are, more than you do. Anyways, you're to eat a plate of kale is to deprive someone who's more hungry than you are. So there's really no answer to the kind of austerity question, the sacrifice question, because if you're alive, then you're guilty. Original sin, the carbon footprint, right? So like, I mean, I'm here, I've got the headphones on, I've got the bathrobe and a cup of coffee. So yeah, I'm going to watch YouTube videos, but I'm going to try to, hopefully my contribution will kind of pay my balance, but I don't know if it will.
I'm excited that you're motivated by that. You're going to keep doing stuff out of, every cent you have is a cent someone else doesn't have. Every thing you eat is something else someone could have eaten or maybe was alive and didn't get to live. Even the plants, who knows? Maybe they're smarter than us and we're eating them every day. So your guilt is pushing you forward, I hope, to keep making things for me to eat.
Well, so this game's about guilt. The food game is. I mean, that's kind of the question is the sensual pleasure of eating fine food. It's you maybe hear music that other people will never hear in their whole lives. Some people never leave their hometowns, or they only eat, cornflakes and ramen noodles and steak dinners, and they never get to eat like durian, or they never get to eat live newborn baby mouse pups or something like that, which is the first course of the meal. And so like this exotic rarefied territory, it's like it's kind of gratifying and pleasurable in that solipsistic way, I think, to just set foot on this rarefied ground, to be able to eat food that people most likely will not taste before they die. And like there's a special dignity and rarity to it. And so the question, I think, is like, at what cost is this worthwhile to pursue? Of what value is the pleasure we experience?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question.
And its level of cost is reflected to how much other people value it. Yes. A lot of the time, that's just how our brains work.
Yep.
I feel bad for Dr. Chicago. I haven't asked his question yet. We have 10 minutes. We're going to be okay.
I'll try to be brief. It's not in my nature.
No.
I'll do my best.
You talk as much as you want. I feel like I've talked too much. Dr. Chicago asks, what changes would you personally like to see in the single athlete modes found in games like Madden Superstar or NBA 2K, My Player, or even coach mode found in Head Coach 09? Are you familiar with these modes?
Oh, yeah. I am.
Sports games, indie or AAA, that are doing interesting things with this.
Yeah, I think it's gonna happen. It's got to. Licensing, it seems tricky to me, but I have played a lot more than I should have of these sports games, because they eventually have diminishing returns, and especially in these kind of strange. I mean, okay, so they're of real interest to me because they seem like the most flagrant offender in this kind of solipsism thing that we were talking about a bit earlier, about how like they give you this false compliment of grandeur, and you can feel this vicarious glory through the avatar of the game. And ultimately, like I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I think it's ultimately it's really depressing at the end, because like you have to confront the fact of this like fantasy, and it's you're not a superstar basketball player, like a video game player. And so it has a real diminishing return to me. I think the answer might be to de-emphasize the grandeur and the glory of sports. And like I want to make a game about minor leaguers, or a women's softball league, or like kind of the B League players, or there's a lot of it kind of blooming around the Pacific Northwest. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but like I'll play pickup games whenever I can, and I think those are much more interesting to me than watching an NBA game. Is playing pickup games with strangers, because you don't have this assumed understanding of their capabilities being at a world-class level. I think a poor basketball player is more interesting to watch than an extremely good one, for the most part, or at least more interesting to play with. I don't want to just get my butt kicked all the time, and I also don't want to be told that I'm good when I'm really not. Like I want to know the truth, and so I think that sports video games, like, they do so much well. Like the RPGs are like, they have so much to learn from kind of the entropy of player characteristics changing over time. How athletes they have this slope off in a way that those characteristics are they decay in very unique ways. Some characteristics decay more quickly, like movement speed, but other characteristics increase over time, like awareness and vision and kind of just wisdom, because you've seen things happen enough times. And so you're like the way that players evolve on rosters and things is really interesting to me. And there's a lot of really smart, cool video game specific stuff being done there. It's like, it's better in sports games. They do it extremely well. And so I think that like those lessons can be stolen and applied elsewhere in games, but also I think I'd like to find other games making their way into sports too, because like the My Player, like the weird complementary avatar fantasy stuff is sometimes like really embarrassingly bad. Like in the NBA games, you can do these interviews after games, and it's like, it's the worst it's the best argument against games, I think, is that moment. It's the best argument against video games.
Tell me more about that moment.
It's terrible. So you have like a press interview, and your player is like, he's sitting at the conference after the game, and he's got his blazer on or whatever, and like some member of the media will ask a question. You can press X to say this, press triangle to say this, or whatever. But it only gives you a sliver of dialogue by which to make the choice, and you don't really know what you're in for. And then your esteem in the media changes depending on how you answer questions with like bravado or like confidence, or maybe you're like too sensational, or maybe you're too humble. And it's just so bad. It's really bad. Like, it's embarrassing. And I mean, I really respect the spirit. I love that they're making the attempt, but it just so clearly is outside of their motivation. And they just want to make a basketball game as well as they can. And so like most of the time has been spent on animating the players and making them look like the celebrity athletes so that they're recognizable. And so this thing kind of thrown in on the side, it's like a side dish that's just, it's not very good. I respect the intention, but
it sounds, for my taste, I'm the kind of guy who plays Heavy Rain as a comedy. Yeah. So for me, it sounds hilarious. Yeah. And then when athletes, it sounds like almost maybe a good metaphor for, you put these, like you said, the people making these games, they want to make a good basketball game. These athletes want to play good basketball. They put the microphone in front of them. They're like, we went out there, we did our best, and
give 110%, and it is what it is. It was what it was. Yeah.
So as maybe an unintentional metaphor for how kind of worthless those interviews are.
Well, I think if they adopted that, I'm with you. I think if they adopted that sentiment with you, like no matter what button you pressed, if the player said like, thanks, Mom, it is what it is. We just did our best out there. We tried to remain competitive and stay strong and cohesive. Like, it's all these cliches. If no matter what you press, it was just some meaningless cliche, like that might be worthwhile as kind of a satire, a jab. And I think it'd be funny. And I think that everybody would be on board with that. But instead they try to elevate it and they try to put words into the player's mouth. And this bravado it's kind of like, it's more in the language of video games than it is of sports. And so it emphasizes the distance between these worlds instead of eliminating the distance. And that's what they're trying to do, is cover it up. But they just end up shining a light on how different these activities are. It's very weird.
Mm-hmm. That's how I am in drag. When I dress in drag, it's highlighting how much I don't look like a woman. It's pretty embarrassing. HD Hurricane asks, ever thought about making a game about being a mom? Possibly having to manage a child who wants to impress you on Mother's Day by joining an MTV reality show. What a specific question. That's very interesting too.
That is it has a conspicuous specificity to it. I mean, okay, first, I'm sorry, what was the user's name? I didn't get it.
HD Hurricane.
HD Hurricane. So first I'd recommend that you play Car Life, because one of the playable characters is a mom. She's recently divorced and she's raising her daughter, Laura. But the reality show thing is conspicuous. I'm not It's not in Car Life.
Teen Mom is really popular right now?
Yeah. Car Life, Car Life doesn't take you to Teen Mom. I don't plan on doing Teen Mom DLC for Car Life, but I would encourage you to make it yourself. It's easier than you think it is to make a game. And so if you have this idea of a game that should exist or could, no one's going to make it for you. You got to do it yourself. And thankfully it's pretty easy to do. I'd recommend looking at Twine or AGS. If you want a game with a good production value, if that's important to you, Unity is great. Blender is, and all these tools are free. So I would just say, get your hands dirty and jump in. You can make games. Anybody can. And we're counting on you to do it. Like in order for this game to get made, if it has value, if you've got something to say, I want to hear it. Like I'm counting on you to make these weird ones. So please do so.
Absolutely. Interestingly specific. If you were to make a mom game, I would probably be like, I appreciate the effort, but you're not a mom, so in terms of autobiography, it would mean as much to me.
Yeah, well, I know that I'm going to get it wrong, and I know that I got a lot wrong in Car Life. So, I mean, I'm not a mother, and yet I made a game about a mom and how choices can go wrong in Car Life, and neither am I a Ukrainian immigrant to the United States. I haven't lost my wife. I haven't, lived. I have lived in a hotel, and been broke and evicted and stuff. And the hotel in Car Life and the owner and stuff. That's all based on my own personal experience. But
oh, really?
But I wasn't like an older, like middle-aged Ukrainian immigrant at the time. I was a young American man, so it was much easier for me. So a lot of this speculative stuff, I realize is kind of hedgy and dangerous because I'm going to get things wrong. But I'd rather do so and get it wrong, because I want there to be more female protagonists in games. I want there to be more moms in games. I want there to be more, more weak or vulnerable, like immigrant life. I think is an interesting thing, and it parallels the player experience because we're all new to the world of a game each time we play a new one, and so we're kind of new to the country, or new to town, and it seemed like a good way to start the conversation. So
so many things you've talked about. I wish I could have talked to you about specifically, but I had to let some go. It's just like having ideas when you're making a game. You usually can't pack them all in.
That's
there.
Right. Yeah.
It'll be overcrowded. But when you were talking about, what was the name of the program that plants you somewhere in Google Maps?
GeoGuessr. Yeah, it's Geo, and it's Guesser without the last E. Guesser. It's great. Yeah. Super good.
Reminded me so much of Alexander Bruce, who made Antichamber. Mm-hmm. He was inspired by just going to China and wandering around and trying to figure out where he was. We're all just new people in these games that we play. We're not NPCs. We're not of that world. We have to adapt to it. And it's great that you're going into it with that thinking. Do you want this show, Richard?
I'm sorry?
You want to just have this show? The show would be so much better if it was just you talking every week.
No.
So many great things to say. I have loved this episode so much.
You're too kind. Thanks so much. It's really kind.
It's absolutely true. I wish it could be longer, but I think we went over a minute anyway.
I see.
Yeah, and Sinistar didn't get angry at me about it. That must mean he was interested too. Normally, like 10 minutes before, he's like, "Quit talking, Holmes."
Well, if anybody has questions for me, I always try to find the time to answer emails and tweets and things. So just
how can they get a hold of you? Let them know as we sign off.
So my name is Richard Hofmeier. I should have an easier name to spell. Like Phil Fish is great for that reason because it's easy to spell. But it's Richard Hofmeier. So you can just Google Cart Life to get to my website, and then there's contact information there. You can also Twitter. I'm pretty fond of Twitter. It's a good way to do it too. It's nice and fast. So just send me something through there as well. Richard Hofmeier.
Richard Hofmeier, at Richard Hofmeier. Yeah. And me, I'm at Tron Knots on Twitter. You can watch reruns of the show on YouTube, on the Detoid TV YouTube channel, and you can listen to reruns on iTunes. We're on iTunes once a week. So that's fun. Richard, thank you so much. I guess we should sign off. I think we're supposed to stop. If Sinistar doesn't actually stop, I'll just ask you all the other questions I wanted to ask you. But in the meantime, we'll wave now just in case the show's ending. Okay.